But for the big businesses, you know, even if they don't shut down, they may stay afloat just because of the capital and the revenue they have. Small business cannot, okay? That is why some kind of bailout deal had to happen. It's unfortunate it had to happen. We took our medicine from years and years of bad economic policies, bad lending policies, bad oversight by the federal, or no oversight by the federal government concerning these lending policies, irresponsible borrowing, irresponsible lending, fraudulent borrowing, fraudulent lending. 10, 20 years of this has built up, and now there's a bitter, bitter pill that we have to swallow with a $700 billion bailout. Again, they may not spend all of that money. And they, as I understand it, they have to re-vote on it again in 2 years, or some stage they have to re-vote to continue it in action. But the $150 billion in earmarks, that's just disgusting. But that's how Congress is right now. That's the reality of Congress. I mean, you can't get a bill passed without earmarks. All right, so what are the what is the deal with this bailout? How does this relate to the homeowner that's in trouble, or to all homeowners? Is this for all homeowners in general? No, it's only for homeowners in trouble because there's strict regulations as to who can get this package. The mortgage must begin before January 1st, 2008. A minimum of 6 full payments must have been made. No second home is owned. Okay, so speculators, you don't qualify for this. The debt-to-income ratio must be at least 31%. No fraud is involved with the loan or the obtainment of the loan or the owner. The owner cannot be have convicted of fraud in the past. There's fully documented income and employment, strict documentation, and here's the catch. The equity is shared with the lender and with the federal government. So the federal government starts to, when they start to take over some of these bad notes, that means that they own the property, right? So if they ever get paid for this property, the money goes back to the government. That's why I'm saying the $700 billion, it's not going to be all of that. It could be any portion of that, but a lot of the money will go back to the federal government once the home sales go back up again. The homeowner, of course, the other regulation, obvious, the homeowner cannot afford the current loan, has to be a requirement, and I believe that that's, you know, strictly based on the debt-to-income ratio, but there may be other, you know, mitigating circumstances or whatever. So that's the deal on the, I have the fact sheet right here. I picked this up from the FHA website, the Federal Homeowner Association. Let's be honest, the FHA has been in the business of backing loans for years. They've backed a lot. They've been insuring loans and insuring credit for you know, a very large number of years, since however that's what they were created for, basically. So they've been doing this for a long time. The only difference is the amount and the circumstances under which they will back the loans has greatly increased. The speculators are not going to, speculators and home flippers and other such greedy people are not going to benefit off this, and the banks are in fact going to have to foreclose on those properties and obtain the properties as they normally do. But the government, Congress, the president, whatever, is hoping that there's enough homeowners in trouble to make this package work, and that those homeowners will be helped by this, by able to keep their home and continue to provide the revenue to the lending institution. All right, and this program will last from October 1st, 2008 through September 30th, 2011, which I believe that is probably the time which it has to be re-voted on again. All right, so that's the deal on that. Now let's talk about some other issues. We talked about the economy for half the show so far and the troubled housing industry. And I don't want to ever see this type of thing happen again. I don't want to have to see this bailout bill. It should have never happened. But we also have some other things going on here. And let me just look through my notes. We have, first of all, we have the whole taxation issue that I wanted to address in a little bit of detail, a little bit more detail than you're probably accustomed to. Who actually pays the taxes in the United States? Doesn't everybody? Well, actually, no. Not everybody does pay taxes. Not everybody pays the income tax. For example, I have a few little pie charts that may sum up a little bit of this for you. The top 5% of the wage earners pay over half of the federal taxes collected in the United States. It's only 5%. 1 out of 20 people pay 53%, pay over half of it. The top 10% of wage earners pay 65%, and the top 50% of wage earners pay 96% of the taxes. This was as of 2003, I believe. And the top 1% pay 37%. Over a third of the federal income taxes are paid by 1% of the people. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? But I have yet another chart that shows the share of income and the share of taxes. And we'll see how these relate to each other. In this chart, you can see that top 1%, 37% is their share of the federal income tax, whereas their share of income is only 19%. Now that's interesting. The top 5% earn 33% of the income, but they pay 57%. Again, almost twice their share of income. Top 10% pay 68% of the federal income tax, but they only have 44% of the income. And the top 25% of wage earners pay 85% of the federal income tax, even though they only make 2/3 of the income. And then you can see that bottom 50%, well, they earn a good 13% share, but they're only paying a little bit of 3%. That's all very interesting. Is that fair? Do you think that tax scheme is fair? To have certain groups of people paying double or 50% more than what their share of income is? I don't know if it's fair. Do you think that I'm saying that I want that bottom 3% to, that bottom 13%? Well, actually, that's the bottom 50% that's paying 13%. That has 13% of the share of income and paying only 3% of the taxes. That sounds like a good deal for them. Would I like to see their taxes go up? No, not really. But the fact is that of that bottom 50%, only about half of them are actually paying the income tax. So that's where it gets very interesting. I personally believe that if everybody pays a share into the system, then everybody has a stake in the system. And the people that have a big share in the system have a big stake in the system. And that's when things start getting a little bit lopsided. That's why I've always favored a flat tax. I think it's very fair. I think a fair tax is a flat tax. And I don't want to see people get taxed more. I want people to get taxed less. But what happens if that bottom 50%, they're only paying 3%? What if that bottom 50% becomes, let's say, bottom 51%, begins to pay 0% of federal taxes? How do you think that bottom 51% will vote? Now you have a majority of American citizens that don't pay taxes. Do you think they would ever vote for anybody that would lower the taxes on those of us that are paying the taxes? Do you think anybody that doesn't pay, how many people that don't pay taxes care how much those of us that are paying taxes pay?